Alright, hello everyone, Fleet Admiral 01, aka John Barcuffer IV here, and today I'm gonna do something a little special. Earlier, ZEF Films made a video talking about his history with Star Trek Online, the game, and I decided I wanted to do one too. So let's get started. I'll have some STO gameplay recorded in the background as I tell this story. Alright, here we go. Well, to begin, I first discovered the game when it was announced back at Star Trek Las Vegas back in 2008. I remember binge collecting STO shirts from their booth in the vendor hall as the Atari-managed Cryptic Studios was giving them out. But the weird thing is, at the same time, I really wasn't all that interested in the game because at the time I was into the first-person shooter genre and didn't know anything about MMOs. On top of that, when I saw the original demo for the game, I saw it as just mindless war games between the Federation and the Klingons, and at the time thought, that doesn't seem very narrative-driven, and felt that if I could get that same experience from, say, Halo. And at the time, my internet privileges were very limited between 2009 and 2011, so I didn't know much about what was going on with Star Trek Online at that point. It wasn't until about 2013, when I was at my senior year of high school, that I finally started to give the game some more attention. I, out of curiosity, took a look at the game, and that was when I discovered that the game had its first big expansion, Legacy of Romulus. When I saw how that tied with the 2009 film, which I liked, by the way, I was thinking, well, looks like the devs had a plan after all. So, I started to look into it. Funny thing is, I didn't actually start playing the game until about a year later. When I was in my first year of junior college, that was when I really began to play the game, if only as a stress reliever. Because I seemed to get a kill streak of bad luck in my second semester, this next part of the story is really on me because this next part of the story is really on me because that casually playing the game here and there quickly became an obsession, where a number of times I actually neglected my studies in favor of the game. It cost me academic credits for that semester, and Mom and Dad were so proud. But I was given another chance and went to a university as a freshman later that year in 2014. This time around, I did my best to keep the game and my academic studies in balance. Because of that, STO became more or less a traveling companion throughout my college years. I was always so intrigued by the story, especially the Iconian War story arc and the Temporal Agents story arc. As the college years went by, other games like the Master Chief Collection, Star Wars Battlefront, BioShock, Destiny, and No Man's Sky came and went, but STO always seemed to stick around. Even my freshman year roommates took interest in it because of how into it I was. It was around spring break in 2015, in fact, the latter half of my freshman year, where my love for the game really started to present itself in a way outside of playing the game every day. It was at this point that I hand-drew and then later digitally remastered the very first ever piece of fan art of my character, of many, Captain Janet DeWitt. And I guess that takes me into the next point of the story. The character. Alright, allow me to introduce you to Captain Janet DeWitt of the Federation starship Titanic. While the game character was created in February of 2014, and since then has several iterations because of multiple times hitting the maximum dilithium farming amount, the character as a whole has actually existed in my head since late 2006. Janet was based on a character from a Star Trek vs. Star Wars vs. other sci-fi, okay, way too many to list here, fan fiction that I wrote between 5th and 6th grade that I had ever since then wanted to turn into an animated fan film. In fact, the entire reason I chose animation as my college study in the first place was the fan film. The character actually was male originally. It was good old 14-year-old self inserting himself into his favorite fictional universe as a form of wish fulfillment. When I created the STO version of the character in 2014, I at that point had already been considering changing the gender of the fan film character and seeing how it would potentially look based on the way my STO character ended up looking really made me commit to that idea, and thus the fictitious Captain Bykoffer became Captain DeWitt. It was at that point that the character I created really took on its own identity. And as I continued to play the game, more and more fresh ideas for my own story came to mind as I progressed through the game story, especially the previously mentioned Iconian War story arc. That identity continued to grow. On that note, my favorite stories so far in the Star Trek Online game are the Iconian War story arc and the Agents of Yesterday story arc, hands down. But for different reasons. Agents of Yesterday really felt like a proper fan service during Star Trek's 50-year anniversary, since the IP ownership at CBS seemed to spend most of the 50-year anniversary giving the middle finger to Star Trek's most loyal fans, the fan film producers like myself. Look, I'll talk about the Axanar incident at some point, believe me, I really want to, but priorities. But anyway, Agents of Yesterday felt like a really genuine fan service while tying up a lot of Star Trek's loose ends, such as the relationship between the Prime timeline and the reboot movies, and the reasons behind the events of Star Trek Enterprise together, while giving us a genuine journey through the classic era that felt authentic to the source material. But in terms of the game's overarching plot, the Iconian War was my favorite. It was the culmination of the story arc that Cryptic Studios had been building up to since the game launched. Plus, I liked the idea of a long-forgotten ancient race coming back out of the shadows and creating chaos in the galaxy. And I had always wondered what the Iconians were like when they were first mentioned in TNG. Do I think the Iconian War story arc was a bit too short for the years building up to it? Yes. But I was happy with what Cryptic did, and more to the point, what we the players did during that storyline. Funny thing is, I should also mention that similarly, the fan film idea I mentioned before, I was also planning on having the Iconians be a major power player in it as well, but I wasn't quite sure how I'd do it. All I knew at the time was that I was considering having them be the ones behind the sci-fi universes in my fan story coming together in the first place. And then seeing STO's version of the Iconians gave me something to go off of, sort of. Now, any story I tell about my experience with Star Trek Online wouldn't be complete without talking about how it played into my college life. It's probably irrelevant to mention the school's name, but I'll go ahead and say it anyway. It was Grand Canyon University in Phoenix, Arizona. I was studying animation like I mentioned before. But even during the roughest times, STO was there for me. If I was having a bad day and needed to be cheered up by indulging in my favorite fictional universe for an hour or so, I could. Like I mentioned before, this really manifested in the latter half of my freshman year when I made that first piece of fan art of my character. I mean, that was around the time that the Voyager expansion, Delta Rising, came out, which I enjoyed. Mostly. Those blasted Vodwar, though. But on a day-to-day basis in my freshman year and in the years that followed when I wasn't playing the game every day, it was a case of I'd be working on a piece of artwork either for classes or a personal project or out for a walk on the campus, and I'd have the STO Plus soundtrack playing in my earbuds. And on that note, anyone watching this who may have went to that school, trust me, if you went to GCU at any point between the fall semester of 2014 and the spring semester of 2018, you'd know which guy on that campus was me. I had my STO shirt on all the time because I had so many of it. Now, I'm not going to pretend that my experience with STO didn't have its down lows here and there, because it most definitely did, ranging from there were parts of the game that I didn't like to mistakes that I made in relation to the game that have come back to haunt me in the years since they happened. I guess I'll start with the elements of the game that I didn't really like. I remember the game being horrifically unbalanced from time to time in the early years that I was playing it, which kind of rubbed me the wrong way. The aforementioned Vodwar, for example. They were the bane of my existence every time I played the Voyager expansion. On that note, I remember the Delta Quadrant expansion having these patrol missions as part of the story that I completely failed to see how they moved the story along. I remember the game at first also having a lot of story missions that came off as fluff and really had no bearing on the overarching plot. I've noticed that they've started to rectify that in the years since by streamlining the story to make those extra missions optional so I can go back and replay those extra stories if I want to, which is cool. Now, for some mistakes that I made in relation to the game that I've come to regret years down the road, as I mentioned in the beginning, there was a time where I actually neglected my school studies in favor of playing the game. There is another piece of that story that I forgot to mention. I also discovered the game's in-game store, and at that point, yep, I fell down that slippery slope, and within a few weeks, blew almost all the money that was rewarded to me with my high school graduation gifts from family and friends, which was almost $1,000. They were not happy about that at all. Some of them outright saw that as a betrayal. I found myself in a difficult position in the months that followed that incident in early 2014 because there were still some in-game items that I wanted on my character, but I didn't want to go I didn't want to go on another spending spree because I already felt like a fool for it because of the first time. And then I discovered dilithium farming in the game. Let's just say I milked that cow a little. You're limited to 10 million dilithium per character, and I've already hit that cutoff point on 5 characters, and at the time of this video, I'm past the halfway point of hitting it on a 6th. Funny thing is, all those characters are slight name variations of Janet DeWitt. My god, that really demonstrates how committed to this fan character I really am, doesn't it? Believe me, as much as I've enjoyed this game over the years, if I could go back in time and change anything, I would convince my past self not to let microtransactions become such a binding leash. I can't end this story without talking about the amazing people both within the studio and without that I've had the pleasure of talking to on social media in the years since I started playing Star Trek Online. The fandom has so many great dedicated fans within it. Writers, fan artists, commentators, and so on. And getting to meet with them on Twitter and DeviantArt and so on and interact and share ideas with them has been fantastic. It's really rekindled my faith in the Star Trek name, and the developers are wonderful to talk to as well. Cryptic Studios, if you are watching this right now, Cryptic Studios, if you are watching this in the light of the Cryptic Studios, if you are watching this in light of the experience I've had playing your game, I can say this for sure. When I really start to take off as an artist/animator or whatever, your studio is on my top 5 dream list of potential places to work. Right up there with Respawn Entertainment and 343. Alright, to conclude, the last few years with this game have been a genuine experience. No other individual game has kept me around this long. Series have kept me around, but no individual game has kept my interest sparked for this many years. Most of the time, an individual game tends to get stale for me and I move on to something else after a year or two. Star Trek Online, however, not only managed to keep me around for almost 6 years, but looks like it has a bright future, with me as a player in it for years to come. While the experience has had its ups and downs over the years, one thing is for sure. If you are in the game and you see this character out and about, it's me. So feel free to say hello. If you liked the video, leave a like and a sub, or follow me on DeviantArt, Twitter, and Instagram. A link to my Ko-Fi account will be A link to my Ko-Fi account will also be included in the description. Totally optional, but if you'd like to, I would be grateful, as I'm still new to this and learning a workflow. But I'll try to get videos like this out more often. Until next time, this is Fleet Admiral 01, aka John Barkhofer IV, signing out. See you all in the next one.